They say that when an object is well loved, it is eventually imbued with a soul. So then what about garbage? Trash that's been thrown away? What is that imbued with?
Gachiakuta has to be up there for one of the most requested manga I have been given to read, review, or just simply talk about, and I finally got round to it. Over the past week, I have immersed myself into this trash manga, pun intended by the way, and after 128 chapters I finally caught up, and I have to say, Gachiakuta is one of the best quote-unquote new generation mangas that I've come across in a hot minute.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
Gachiakuta follows the story of Rudo, and Rudo lives in a society that floats on an island known as the Sphere. The sphere hovers above the ground below, and the premise here is that not only is there a cultural divide between the ground and the sphere itself, but there is also a cultural divide between the folk who actually live on the sphere. One side of the sphere is clean, there is no waste, and everyone is perfect, and cleanliness reigns supreme and is highly valued. Trash or garbage is viewed as not only an eyesore, but it's also as if it's taboo. To even be close to it is viewed as if it's a crime. To even be even trifling through it is a crime itself. The trash and waste of the society serves only one purpose: to be thrown away, cast out and tossed from the sphere to the ground below. On the other side of this culture, there are the tribesfolk, or the ground folk, the people who live on the other side of the wall or on the ground. Eventually, Rudo is introduced to us as someone who has an uncanny attachment to the trash or garbage that others throw out, and is known to these spherites as a trash raider. He holds these items close to himself for reasons that we discover late in the story. Spoilers, Rudo is also the son of a ruthless killer, and the whole town is waiting for him to finally snap and kill someone. And eventually, it happens. But not really. The town believe he commits the murder of his adopted father, Regto, when in actuality Rudo was framed. And once framed, he's cast from the sphere to the ground below with the rest of the trash. In an emotional display, we see him tossed to the ground, as if he was trash itself. But throughout the first chapter, the series does something wonderful. It does wonderful things. It sets up a culture divide and it forces you to almost pick a side. The classic us versus them, and obviously you're going to be with us, because them, well, they're a piece of shit. And it sets up mysteries for us for later to figure out who is Rudo's dad. Why did he give him these scars? Why is the trash on the sphere treated as taboo? Why has he got these gloves? How did this all come to be? The series goes about this first chapter wonderfully, but the best thing it does is set up the character. From the very moment you open the series, you are greeted with a unique art style, a unique world, and even more of a unique set of cultures and characters. And the further you get into the story, the more you come to appreciate that level of detail. The characters that you meet along the way, they all have their own vibe, their own style, their own personality, and they don't feel like characters who are only there to serve the purpose of assisting Rudo and the plot. They feel alive. They feel as if they're all living their own little lives, like as if you just left Trevor in GTA and then rejoined them at a random point in time during the game and you find him beating up a hooker in the street. It's just, it feels alive. Now, slight spoilers ahead here, but you've been warned. Take, for example, Rudo and the Raiders. Rudo ends up joining a faction known as the Cleaners. The Cleaners' goal is to get rid of the trash on the ground. Get rid of that trash cast out by the sphere and try to figure out why it is they live in a world where the sphere drops trash onto them, and then uncover their own history of their own people. And then on the other hand, the Raiders and the characters within that faction serve the purpose of wanting to destroy the sphere and bring an end to the ruin that the sphere has brought upon the ground. But Kei Urana has this thing where these characters actively appear at irregular intervals, and it's these moments that make them seem alive and real, as if they've been living their own little life just only to bump into our cast. These moments happen as if our cast have just bumped into them in the world, and that in and of itself I think is a beautiful concept. It's something that I don't think many other manga can do in a way such as this. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like, oh, this character just appeared for the plot, but in this series it feels like we're running into them in the world as we're exploring the world. These characters all seem to have their own lives and goals and personality, and they all contribute to the story, but they aren't just here to pull the story forward, but rather deepen the lore for each character and themselves. And the most recent example I can give here is Folo. A character who's been in and out of the story the entire time, but quietly in the background has been growing this resentment for Rudo based on his own internal and past struggles with what it means for him to be himself and not be left behind. And with his newfound resolve, after being given a second chance by Rudo, Folo steps forward to fight, which leads me into the next step of this video. The fight.
I get a wheel in the club on the microphone. They didn't know I handle bars.
Now, I think when it comes to any shonen battle manga, getting the power system correct has to be integral. It has to be important. It has to be the forefront of the series, in my personal opinion. Otherwise, things can feel a bit silly. They can feel contrived if it's not done correctly. And the best example are my two personal favorite power systems, Nen and Cursed Techniques. Cursed Energy from Jujutsu Kaisen and Hunter x Hunter. They were very similar, but also very complex. They were extremely complex. And then we get into the fights, and you can get some of the craziest action from Shonen Jump just within these two series. If you've read Hisoka vs. Crollo or Gojo vs. Sukuna, then you know that these two fights are the pinnacles of those respective power systems being put on display. They are deep, they are intricate, they're filled with mind games, and they take the power system and push it to the very limits of everything that we know. And the complexities of the abilities, the compatibilities of the Nen and Cursed Techniques, pushing and pulling until one eventually gives way, is always a good read to enjoy. But Gachiakuta's power system is extremely simple. It's not complex. It doesn't have layers and layers of complexity in the same way Nen or Cursed Energy does. It's simple in a way of you love an object and eventually you imbue it with anime, and that anime brings out the object's full potential. And that is basically it, from my understanding, from everything that I've read so far, and that's something that really hit home for me. While yes, Nen and Jujutsu Cursed Energy, they're both infinitely cooler in my personal opinion, I think it's kind of hard to imagine yourself in that world, and it kind of breaks your immersion, because if you want to imagine yourself in that world and get immersed in that world, so too then you have to create a technique or a Nen power for yourself, and then you have to follow the rules and regulations that that world and those powers come along with it. You can't just be this all-powerful god if you want to immerse yourself in that kind of world. But with Gachiakuta, it's a simple case of, I love this umbrella is now strong. And that's it. And it takes me back to when I was a kid, to those times where you'd have this favorite toy and you'd never let it go. For me, it was this broken arm of a Bionicle. I'm sure I still have it floating around in here somewhere as well. And I would imagine that this broken arm of this Bionicle was all sorts of forms, and it would take on this wave of creativity for whatever I needed it to do, for whatever situation I was playing in when I was a kid. And Gachiakuta kind of embodies that in a way. It showcases people's attachments to these random objects, to these vital instruments, and lets them go absolutely crazy with them. It doesn't overcomplicate things. However, what I will say is Kei Urana's fights for me personally are not the best in the early chapters. There are pros and cons to this series, and the fights can often feel cluttered. They can feel hard to follow due to the art style feeling so distorted in terms of trying to show off the speed and movement. It's hard to follow the characters and where they are, leaving you with this sort of sense of claustrophobia and closed-inness within the panels. And it's not until around like maybe the 60-70 chapter mark where Kei starts to really find a groove and how to present these fights. But once that groove is found, it's fucking insane. You can see that style grow and change over time, and that's something I love to see and experience with a manga. Vagabond is the best example that I can give from me to you personally. As you read through the story of Vagabond, you see the art change and develop and grow, and you see Inoue try new things and styles, and it's a beautiful experience to go through. Also, off topic, I just bought the first 2 volumes of Real, so I'm really very excited to get into this. Takigo Inoue, again, the GOAT. I also accidentally bought the prequel series to Psycho Pass. I meant to buy the normal Psycho Pass, but I bought the prequel series to it apparently. So I guess we're going to be reading that soon. Anyway, speaking of artwork, the artwork for Gachiakuta is quite possibly one of the most unique I've come across in a hot minute. These characters are drawn with slim and slender muscular bodies, exactly how you'd expect people living within this sort of post-apocalyptic world to be. It's very insane, and Kei excels at depicting these insane shots that show these vast open landscapes or close-up claustrophobic shots. You see a lot of it within the first chapter, and there's panels that make our heroes blur the line between who is a hero and who is a villain. And these panels are cast throughout the series, and they do this exact thing, but the artwork is just one thing. But that isn't what I want to talk about right now. What I actually want to talk about is Gachiakuta's graffiti. You see, the graffiti within the world of Gachiakuta ties itself closely not only to the building of the world around it, but it's also an integral part to some plot points, if not all of the plot points. Who fucking knows at this point? But the culture within the world and more are all tied to this graffiti, and there's little hints throughout the series that you keep seeing, and if you're not looking for them, you'd think nothing of it until it's eventually pointed out to you by the cast. And graffiti with Gachiakuta is almost its own don't care, serving to add culture and history to the world, and it ties itself into this mystery of the world and the world building as a whole. And the world is certainly filled to the brim with mysteries, and if there's one thing this series can do, it's fill it out with untold mysteries for his readers to get involved in. Chapter 129 so far about to be released, and there is a lot of mysteries for us to uncover, and it's almost reminiscent of early One Piece. If you read early One Piece, you're aware of this bigger world at play, but you don't really know that much until you slowly start exploring it and you slowly start to see it all unfold. And again, as I said, we're almost 130 chapters deep, and I can't see the series ending anytime soon, but it has been an absolute pleasure to read through this series, and I truly believe that this could become a long-running series, and I would like to see that from Guy. I really enjoy it. But anyways, that's enough yapping from me. If you've not already, please go read Gachiakuta. It is an absolutely phenomenal series, and I truly enjoyed my time. And if you're a fan of this channel, a fan of the content that I do, you will probably enjoy this manga. I almost guarantee it, sort of. It is probably one of the best up-and-coming new gen. If I had to place a top 3 on the current quote-unquote new gens, I would probably say Gachiakuta, Kagurabachi, and Centuria would probably be up there for me personally as some of the best new gens that have come out right now. They're all below 200 chapters, some of them below 50 and 100 chapters. Easy reads to get through if you're looking for some new manga. If you feel like Shonen Jump is feeling a bit sparse right now, there's definitely manga out there for you to get involved in and enjoy. But anyways, that's everything from me. Gachiakuta is a phenomenal series, and I hope you have a phenomenal day. Make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love, big fucking kisses, peace.